just put Neeraj's video on. Let me handle it. Hello, welcome. We're just about to get started. Okay. Hey, Neeraj. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 6, the final day of Should Art 2020, an art and culture festival celebrating 5 years of G5A. My name's Ishan, and along with Neeraj, we'd like to welcome you to a special edition of G5A's Virtual Cinema Club. For Should Art 2020, we bring together artists who've been an integral part of our community and journey over these past 5 years. And in the attempts to continue to build a community and ecosystem that believes in the possibility of new, unfiltered voices and the possibilities of building communities that are equitable, inclusive, and just in thought and expression. For those of you who've been following the Virtual Cinema Club journey, some of this next bit might be a bit of a repeat, but please bear with us. So with Virtual Cinema Club, we look at films closely through the lens of the director and see what threads begin to merge. We've completed over 25 weeks since the lockdown first began, and have since introduced intermission sessions like today's, where we look at the craft of filmmaking even more closely. And today's session is focused on everything we hear when watching a film, the sound. So welcome to Sounding Off with Resul Pookutty. Resul is a film sound designer and sound mixer who's an Academy Award winner for Best Sound Mixing, as well as a Cinema Audio Society Award winner. Hi, Resul.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Guys.
We're really looking forward to talking sound with you. I think particularly because that's something, you know, that, I mean, a lot of the, I think with the intermission sessions, what has been, you know, a strong thread, at least for Neeraj and I, is that so much of the craft works well or is successful when people don't see it or don't realize it, you know. And I think particularly like with sound, that's something that you can, that happens so much, but it's so integral, right, to the whole viewing experience, because it in some senses it tells you exactly how to feel almost. You know, so I guess the one of the first questions that, you know, we sort of wanted to know was what is the usual process of, like, when are you introduced, like when do you join projects, like right in the beginning, middle, like, you know, just if you could.
Yeah, quite early on in the production, when you have the artist, I mean, actually very, very early on. Sometime in the early stage of the pitch that we would come on board, and at times maybe the main production is locked, but well before the actual shooting happens, you know, during the pre-production we join, and we read the script, we give our opinions, reactions, and we make our notes, we discuss, like the cameraman, we would do recce's, figure out what can we do, how can we do things. We have our notes with the director, an idea of, you know, the entire spectrum of sound. Then I do go for shoot. During the shooting, for me, I am collecting my raw materials, you know, and first among them is the actor's performance. You know, I record production sound, which are basically performance of actors at the time of the shoot. You know, we basically concentrate on picking up the performance, you know, and that is one aspect of it, you know. Then also experience spaces, you know, understand what the milieu the film is actually based on, understand them, understand what it is, how is it going to be defining things,
right?
So it's, for me, that is what is the whole shooting, the process of production is all about. And when I come to post, there'll be, you know,
Did we lose?
I think we lost him.
just give me a sec.
Sure.
So, sorry about that.
No worries.
So in the post-production, when the edit is complete, I look at the edits very early on, and I give my reactions to the edit, and a sort of, what is the sound of it sort of shaping in me at that time. Then once the edit, I receive the edit, I sit with the director and try and understand what is his vision about, and I make a sound script, and based on which I started etching things, See,
What
like
is
you
a sound
said,
script?
Sorry?
What is a sound script
exactly?
What's a sound script? Okay. So there are obvious notes of sound probably written by during the scripting stage. For example, say the writer has written, somebody walked out of the room, So you start hearing things. Someone is walking out means you're hearing footsteps. Okay.
Yeah.
So imagine instead of that, he has written, he stormed out of the room.
Okay.
So now what is that makes somebody storm out of the room? It's a stomping of the footsteps, or he just walks out and we put a slamming of the door.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
From the sound of a door, probably I can make an audience feel the emotional state of being that person is in.
Yeah.
So I try and understand what are the subtext that they have left for me, unexplained, or maybe it needs more explanation in the way of storytelling.
And the sound script you're doing before production starts or after the edit is done?
After the edit is done, because when
so
you read a script and
go off of.
Say that again.
You're using the performance also as a basis to build the sound script as well as the screenplay itself.
See, for example, when we were, I very well remember when we were making Split Wide Open very early, and one of my very first film, where I have done production sound and then worked on the sound editorial. There was a sequence when this main character, Rahul Bose, is searching for this girl in this alleys of Bombay. And we had... Madam, please. Sorry. So we had this sequence where in the fishing village of Mumbai, where this guy is searching for this girl, and there were a group of boys playing cricket, and suddenly you hear, they play cricket, then you realize that from the sound of the cricket ball, it is actually a plastic ball, It's not actually a real ball.
Yeah.
For me, it immediately gives me a clue. Okay, this talks something about where they are and what they are, So the clue that I get from those sound images, I try and enhance it in the post-production.
Right.
Maybe certain clue that I only have heard or I only have understood. How can I enunciate it, Or so that is one aspect. And certain aspect, there are certain things that you leave in the storytelling, probably not very well etched in terms of, in shooting something happens, when editing, a third meaning arises. So you make all this. First and foremost is what is that you do in terms of storytelling? What is that you can do, in terms of storytelling? And second is, what is the subtext of that storytelling? What is the subtext? And how can you enunciate a subtext, So these are the levels in which you would improve a sound, I mean, you build a soundscape around that. So when I said about sound script, I am trying to understand one, what is the vision of the director. I'm trying to understand what is the milieu, and I'm trying to understand what is the main stem of the story. And I'm also trying to understand what is the subtext. And these are all things that puts together at one level. Now, like the way a cameraman has given a visual language to the film, I am also thinking, what is the oral texture of this film? These two comes together as a perception of a moving image. So what is the texture that I want to give? Is it harsh? Is it soft? Is it, is it close? Is it broader? And what kind of images that comes with it? What kind of music that comes with? Because it's a sound is an amalgamation of many other things.
Yeah.
So I form an opinion about what is the sound and what kind of sound. Yeah. Then is the search for it, then is constructing things one by one. For example, if I may ask, what are the kind of sounds that you hear in a movie? Apart from, say, these spoken dialogues or the actor's performance on location. Apart from that, what are the kind of sound that you hear?
Yeah, I mean, you have like,
if I very broadly talk about it, let's say we hear 5 kind of sounds. Let's pick up 5 elements of sound. See, very earlier on in the introduction, Ishan said, sound allows you to see things. Actually, when you think about cinema, what is cinema is all about? Cinema is a continuum of time and space. Okay, when you see a 2-dimensional picture, you're actually looking at a space, probably a landscape, probably a room, probably someone's face, anything, a 2-dimensional space that expands from left to right of a screen. Whereas sound is a temporal element of that space. Every space is associated with sound. There's a temporal element that associated with that space, and sound is a temporal element. And actually, sound allows you to go inside the picture. The whole experience of sound is actually takes the audience inside the picture. So in a way, you can say the whole experience of sound is immersive in nature. For example, why do you feel quiet when you sit in a seashore? Or why do you feel quiet when you are in a valley, when you look at mountain or look at sea?
It's not because it's actually quiet, it's because it's quiet relative to the space.
So what I'm saying, there in those places, you are hearing longer expressions of sound.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I guess like it's like it's not as like.
For example, when you're in a seashore, you're hearing sea waves, which are longer expressions of sound. And the longer expressions of sound has the ability to calm you down. If you go to a valley, I mean, you listen to the bird's call in a valley. The valley bird has a longer call.
Interesting.
And if you're in a city, you're hearing shorter expressions of sound.
Yeah.
You're hearing more of high frequencies. The traffic, the car noises. The horns and people and zig 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 zig. And it has an ability. See, we are constantly affected. Our behavior is constantly affected by the sounds that we're hearing. Which is something that we don't decipher, but that is how our human behavior is. So when you go into a particular space, suddenly you feel quiet or you feel calm. And if you analyze, it's actually the kind of sounds that you're hearing in that space. I mean, for example, if I check into a hotel room, the first thing that I look at is, where is the fridge? The fridge hum bothers me. Is there a tube light? That bothers me. The AC rattling bothers me. I just go and fix all that first so that I can have a peaceful sleep. I switch off the refrigerator in the room. So there are certain things that actually bothers you. And also, after a certain point, your human brain start ignoring things that it doesn't want.
Correct.
You're actually constantly, your eardrum is constantly vibrating. There are electrical pulses constantly being transmitted to your brain, and the brain takes some decisions.
Right.
I want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. I want to put this. And when you sleep, see, your eyes shut, your vision stops, but your hearing is not stopping. It is constantly working, like the way your heart is pumping. So, likewise, so the difference in cinema and life, is that we make certain choices. Out of the 5 different sounds available, or like a million sounds available, I choose 100 sounds to play to you.
Right.
So it become my choice of things that I want to pass it on to my audience.
Correct.
Then what becomes important is that what is my experience of a particular space. Now, what is it that defines this experience? For example, I mean, if I say, like I said, the first element of sound that I would hear in a film, apart from the actor's performance, let's say, is the ambience of that place. Every space is associated with, I said, the temporal element. Now, when you hear a thunder rumble, that monsoon is around the corner.
Yeah.
Right. So these are the sounds that can give you a sense of time.
Those clues.
Sense of time. So sometimes it can define time of the day. Like you hear a factory siren, which means probably 6 a.m. or 9 o'clock in the morning, or you hear an azan in the morning. So it gives you a time of the day, correct? Or it can be seasons. You hear the sound of a coil, and you hear it only during the summer. Or you hear sound of rain. It directly tells you monsoon.
Yeah.
So ambient sounds are actually defining the space. Like if I say in the beginning of the discussion, I said, a picture is a 2-dimensional exposition of space.
Yeah.
The moment I start putting sound to that space, I'm actually concretizing the meaning of that space. You see, a picture can be abstract. A 2-dimensional picture can be abstract in its meaning, what you see and what you get. It's become subjective. But the moment I put sound of a rain over a shot, I am actually saying that, okay, this is monsoon.
Yeah.
You're adding context.
I am actually concretizing the meaning of something that probably the director hasn't envisioned. You see? So I think as a sound man, I have a much bigger responsibility towards my audience and towards my audience in concretizing meaning of images that have been put together. You see?
But I think also just to add to that, you're also working to I guess deliver the different aspects of like the characters to the audience, right? To like you said that how sound almost like brings you into the picture. You also in some way bringing audiences into the character.
Yes, right? I am. That is one aspect, but I am also making the audience hear some selective things. The listening in film is actually selective listening. I am asking you to listen to this at this particular point of time.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm giving you at that moment. And see, nothing comes accidental in films. No sound comes accidental.
Yeah.
Except the fact that the kids were playing with plastic ball. Nothing comes accidental. Everything is put it on there. I mean, for me, that is the beauty of live sound. It gives me accidental exposure to milieu, to subtext, to meanings, at times. So I attach great value and importance, even if it is badly recorded live sound. I attach great importance to it, because it gives me something that
but it also has so many, I think, layers, right? Which you're saying with the plastic ball, that on like first listening, audiences might not hear, but you're hearing it and slowly, I guess, like unfolding.
Yeah. So the second aspect of sound, the second layer of sound, if I may talk about it, is like we would say actor's performance. Now, how do I concretize the meaning of an actor's performance? Let's say their movement, their performance, say I'm enhancing their performance. For example, like I talk about in the script, if something is written, that person is, stormed out of the room. Suppose you're not seeing anything, you're only hearing. Imagine I put sound of an executive shoe in the footstep. Then I'm saying that person is of a particular kind.
Correct.
Instead of that, say I am putting the sound of high heel shoes. I define gender there. Okay. And along with the sound of, say, suppose if I'm putting sounds of, say, mujri, sounds of, kolhapuri chappal, which is a creaking leather. I am anthropologically defining that particular character. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Suppose along with the footsteps, if you're hearing sound of a pile, then I have even more furthered into the anthropological meaning of that particular character.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I am also I also have the ability. Suppose imagine I'm working on a period film. I am also defining period. An audience is extracting meaning of time, say in terms here in the discussions, the sense of period, not from things that he or she is seeing in terms of visually how the period is being established, also from hearing.
Correct.
That the fact that I am not putting any modern sounds, what would be the ambience of a particular place 100 years before now,
Yeah.
Correct.
Or when I'm working on a science fiction movie, say something from say 10 years or 50 years from here, how would sound of a car will sound 50 years from now? These are my imaginations. I'm putting that imagination into practice and giving them a sense of timing, So constantly I am defining time. Constantly I am giving you a temporal element. That's why Tarkovsky said sculpting in time. I am actually building, I am actually sculpting in time. I'll come to that later. So this performance enhancing sound is actually a set of people. Look at the edit, look at the film, look at how people are walking, characters are walking in a frame. What is their action? They actually start re-performing their entire performance in a studio, and we capture it and we use it in the film to enhance an actor's performance. We add that to the production sound and we enhance it and we call it Foley sounds.
Right.
It could be door, it could be footsteps, it could be shufflings, it could be jewelry, it could be anything that is directly related to the performance in by which we enhance actually the performance of every actors and every performance in the film. So that is the second element of kind of sound that you hear. The third element is, let's say sound effects. Sound effects are sounds that we use it, when you talk about filmmaking, there's something called dynamism in filmmaking, every camera angle that a director would choose is to dynamize storytelling that he or she chooses to do. The fact that I want to see this person up close, the fact that I want to see this person's eyes, or the fact that I don't want to see him, I go far away, I want to see the landscape where he is in. Every time a director and a cameraman chooses lenses, they're actually dynamizing a particular narrative. And for me, sound effects are the equivalent of lenses in one way, in choosing to dynamize every narrative aspect of filmmaking, storytelling. For example, like I said, somebody stormed out of the room. How would I make an audience feel that he stormed out? I put a door slam. Immediately give me, like an idea of, like, sound effects are used like that for dramatic impact. Somebody is falling.
Correct.
The height of the fall, I can make an audience feel from the way I would use, there's a very very famous sound joke, somebody who is falling from 7th floor is thap, and somebody is falling from 2 floor is thap
I see what you're saying.
Poor joke, but PJs,
No,
but
no,
sound.
I get
sound
what you're
PJs.
saying. It's but all of that adds context to what's happening, right?
Exactly. So I'm not using the word context here. I'm using the word of concretizing meaning. Every image, what it is associated with. I'm concretizing the meaning with all these elements. Then comes the third element, or the fourth element is the music. Now, music, according to me, is one of the most dangerous elements. That's because it's an interpretation of a composer's vision. His interpretation of a particular scene. Now he's not looking at each shot. I am looking at each shot. I am deconstructing the whole film into scenes, and then scenes into shots, and shots into what's happening inside every frame. That's what I'm deconstructing. With
each image.
Sounds. Yeah. Whereas this composer is not deconstructing to that very detail.
Right.
He is looking at only a flow of emotion in a particular given context. And in the flow of emotion, he chooses to perform an emotional quotient of that flow of emotion.
Right.
He's actually extracting an emotional quotient out of a flow of events in a given period of the film.
Right.
To me, every performance that the composer does has an imprinted emotional element inside it.
Right.
And as a filmmaker, and what we always do in filmmaking is control the emotion, control the melodrama, control the emotion, because we want the audience to feel a certain emotion at this particular point of time.
Yes.
We want tears to well up in their eyes, not to fall. We want it to fall at a later stage.
Right.
We want to control this. To be able to control this, all these 5-6 elements that we talked about, actors' performance, Foley, sound effects, ambiances, and there is another element called sound design. Again, sound design is quite like music, but not music. They are not performance of musical instruments, but they are performances that a sound designer like me assembled together. It has a sense of rhythm. It also has emotional impact, and it's not music, but it is quite like music.
Interesting.
These are all expressions of sound put together. Say, for example, if a composer is using musical instruments to create his expression of emotion, I am using microphones to create expressions of music. Like, for example, one sound will be heard by different microphones differently. One face, for example, one portrait will be seen by a 50 mm lens, an 80 mm lens, and a 100 mm lens differently.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct? Like that, a shotgun mic, a long gun mic, a modular microphone will hear the same sound differently. If I collect all this and put it together in a way that comes to you as an expression, comes to you as a series of images, that will also carry a sense of emotion, right? But this is not music, but musical, because it has a sense of rhythm.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is musical because it also carries a sense of emotion, right? But not musical performances.
Yes.
We put this, we create expressions, emotional expressions, like the way a composer has created, to a particular flow of events. See, from now I have gone from the deconstructed single frame to flow of shots.
Yeah.
And I construct like that. I've done a lot of stuff like that in Manto. I will come to it when we discuss it. So that's called sound design. See?
Okay.
So you have performance sound, which is production sound. We have Foleys, which are performance enhancing sounds.
Right.
We have ambiances that creates that defining, temporal element. You have sound effects for dramatic purposes. You have sound effects, sound design as expressions, which are sound design. You have music, which is a composer's expression. Now, all these 5-6 elements, I decided to play to you at one point of time. Imagine a two-minute stretch of a film. And I decided to play sound effects here. I decided to play production sound here. I decided to play, sound design here. I decided to mix all the, vary the levels of all this and put it across to you as one emotional expression. This becomes a new composition.
Yes.
So with all the individual compositions, that includes the actor's performance, that includes cameraman's interpretation, that includes a production designer's interpretation, that includes editor's interpretation. All this interpretation comes to me and I construct it one by one. Imagine a landscape. At times you see everything in the landscape. At times I am going to fill up things with all these sounds and you are not hearing the landscape. You are not seeing the landscape. At times I am removing elements, sound elements, and I'm showing you a little bit of the landscape. So I'm constantly taking the advantage of all these elements and putting it across to my audience. This is the element of a landscape I want you to see. This is the element of landscape I want you to see.
In a way, with the sound, you can guide the eye, even in a wide shot, even if the frame is not guiding the eye, the sound can guide the eye to a specific place.
So I work like what Ishan said early on in the discussion. He said about, it allows you to watch. So I am actually with the help of sound, I am the gaze of the audience. I become the gaze of the audience.
Interesting. Very. I mean,
what they have to watch, how they have to watch.
Yeah.
Ishan, if you can play the clip that I just sent to you.
Yeah. We can just give us a second. We'll keep that up. I mean, while that's happening, I was just saying, I think it's also, at two levels. I felt when you were saying that is that, it's sort of this role as like if we in the sound design one particularly, and then also in all of them together, is sort of, it feels like the role almost like of a conductor, in like a classical let's say Western format, where they know the music, they know every part of the music, right? Whereas each musician and each sort of instrument is focused on their what they have to do and their, I guess, expression, to use your word. But whereas you are looking at all of these elements and you are sort of guiding the listener in this case to say listen or look or experience this section now, and then this section, or all of these together,
Yes. For example, when I construct a film, when I mix a film, I am actually hearing millions of sounds flowing in front of me. I know every file, you see,
right?
And I know what it is doing to the audience. When the director says, no, actually I didn't, I want that emotion to come a little more. No, I didn't like that performance. Can you just mask it? Can you do something about it? Yeah. For example, so we also do fixes. We are also constructing in a way that we can do fixes.
Right.
The understanding is, okay, if I do something with a particular sound, what is the emotional impact that it is going to make to the audience? That is where I make judgments. That's where I am coming in. It's like a director explains you things from the sense of emotion.
And your job is to translate.
And you translate that technically.
Yeah.
Right.
For example,
okay,
let me equalize that dialogue and hear a little more of that frequency, and that frequency, hearing that particular frequency in that particular scene will create this emotion. Or will enhance it. Or for example, say, just mush it. just move it away. I don't want
Right.
that to be apparent in the conversation. Okay, then we might add some reverbs and just push it down.
Right.
So every time we are dealing with sounds, we are constantly processing that sound, and we are constantly working with it, and we are constantly deforming it, in a way
Yeah.
that that every sound constantly changes the meaning of it. Though those were just sound files at once,
Right.
until the picture started moving.
Right. Right.
And when the picture started moving,
That's
the
when.
way that the decisions that I am taking, technical and aesthetic decisions that I am taking, to change, to correct, to deform it, to metamorph a sound,
Right. Right.
will constantly redefine the meanings of the flow of images. Like I said, I am constantly making an audience hear a landscape, mask it, remove
Yeah.
it, add it, So sometime I show them the height of it. Sometime I show them the breadth of it. Sometime I pinpoint. So I have all the ability, with the construction of sound like that. That
Yeah.
is what that's what a sound designer do, and the sound mixer do in a film.
Yeah.
So like you said, like we said in the beginning of the discussion, so it allows me to constantly play up, with the meaning of a construction.
Yeah.
Plus, it also allows the audience to go inside the picture.
Exactly.
Like I said, when a picture is two-dimensional, sound is spherical. It comes all around him.
Yeah.
Sound comes to him from all the sides.
Right.
Like I said, when the sound has the ability to take you inside the picture, which means the very experience of sound is immersive in nature. With the advent of technology today, what we use in filmmaking is we have given a physical geometrical expression, meaning of this very same formative, aspect of sound, which is immersive experience. With the advent of Dolby Atmos and ImSound and Aura 3D and all that, which is actually giving a geometrical, physical experience of sound. Sound is coming from top of your head. Sound is coming from the left corner or right corner or behind you. All that
The
is
spatial
actually
awareness.
the spatial orientation. It is actually, that's how a sound is embedded in the real life, which you are not constructing, reconstructing, which we never aware of it. But we are giving a new meaning to it. I mean, that new meaning, where it come from? It comes from the very experience of sound. That very experience of sound itself is immersive in nature. It comes
I have
from
a
that.
quick question. So, oftentimes, like for example, as a cinematographer, I've worked on a project where, for example, the director will come to us and almost, I will say, they'll almost set a rule, for example. So, for example, they might set a rule saying, when we start with the film, let's have the frame a little bit more closed off. And, as we start to experience the film and get to the end, let's open up the frame. Do you ever set rules as such, saying, maybe in this film we will not do this, or we will start here and end here, like more broader strokes for like the start to finish? We talked about like scenes and sequences, but like a start to finish, do you ever set a rule or anything like that?
Yeah. So every film comes with such artistic choices. For example, when I was doing Mixed Doubles, a film called Mixed Doubles. Mixed Doubles was a film I wanted to go back to the olden times of creating cinematic expression, which was when we do Foley these days. When we do Foley, we have the ability to do only footsteps, one shot. You do it, you record it. Okay, then that expression is not right. You go and correct it. But in the olden times, when we didn't have the digital technology, in the olden times, they didn't have any option. They have to look at the picture, and everybody has to come together and perform it. So somebody would be catching, the hero's footstep. Somebody would be catching the heroine's footstep. The other person would be doing their activity.
And you have to match it.
Three, four people in a room would be catching 3-4 activities of characters in one given scene, and they would perform. And that performance had an amazing quality. Sometimes those may not be perfect in terms of technical perfection, in terms of having sync and everything, but it had a certain dynamism of performance, and I decided that in mixed doubles I will do that. Even though I have a digital technology available today, I can do far more precise work, but I would choose this method, because I wanted a certain dynamism of performance to come in,
Yeah.
So I made the Foley guys to do one reel, 10 minutes of performance at one go. Suppose they made a mistake, they didn't catch the sync, we would go back, rewind, and redo everything. Start from the top, So then I would come to the studio and I would edit technical fixes. I would do technical fixes, things like that. So there is always such decisions that we make, like say for example in Slumdog, what is that I have done is I constantly analyzed how human brain is processing sound. And how can I achieve that? I mean, to tell you an example, to tell you to explain it in real terms. Suppose you and me are walking down the street, in Bombay, you hear tons of sounds. There are traffic, there are people, there this sound, that sound, but we are making a conversation. Human brain has the ability to ignore the traffic and only hear what you and me are talking. But if I keep a microphone there, microphone doesn't have that intelligence. It doesn't reject anything. It takes everything in.
It takes
For example, you walked into a party, 100 people in a room partying, and your friend is standing in the other corner of the room, and she waved at you and said hello. Suddenly, human brain has the ability to go only to her.
Yeah.
You see? But if I keep a microphone there, microphone will hear every chaos, and microphone will never hear her. So because I was doing live sound in Mumbai, the noisiest city in the world, and Danny Boyle wanted everything to be live, I was constantly analyzing what is human brain doing. Because what I did in the first week of the shoot, I went to the location. I did a film called Gajini with Amir Khan, just before that.
Okay.
And I thought I have mastered the art of recording live sound in Mumbai. If you can record live sound with Amir, then anything is possible. So I went on the first day of the shoot, and nothing is working. Like nobody knows what is happening. There are 7 cameras on the set. Anyone and everyone is shooting. Anything is happening. So I have no clue. I have no control. I started putting order on the set because you need certain order to capture sound, and I miserably failed. Okay. Then on the second week, in the first day break, I was thinking I have to do myself some unlearning. What I am trying to do is I am trying to record everything in the professional way. Everything have to be heard. Everything should be clear. The quintessential American way, the quintessential Hollywood way. I said, leave that. Okay. This is the performance of people happening in Bombay. Okay.
Right.
I will record the soundscape of Mumbai. And within the soundscape, this performance is evolving. I changed my complete attitude like that. I thought I'm making some disastrous professional decisions. I thought Danny Boyle making one film, some few white people will see it, and my reputation will be saved. I thought this is my best opportunity to do some experiments. I am not answerable to anything.
Yeah.
That's how I went. A sound man will choose the minimum number of microphones in a given location, in a noisy location, the minimum. I have used the maximum number of microphones that I can use in a given situation to create soundscapes. So that's why I want to play that scene and talk about it.
Yeah.
Right?
We'll
if you can play that now.
play it now. It's ready.
Wake up every morning wishing I didn't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we good, Ishan?
Yeah. Well, there was just
Awesome.
we just got some warning, but I think we should be okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. So, see, all those elements of sound that we talked about, it comes and goes in the film. For example, when we were shooting the sequence, the only sound note I had from Danny was that Danny said, "Resul, I want to hear the sound as if water is running through your ears." So then immediately, then immediately I knew what is the perspective to take. But then I also knew from the understanding, from my experience, also knew that this is something that we recreate in the. This is not a decision that I take it, on while on the shoot. But then I have to capture elements where I can, make this possible for him, So I have used multiple stereo microphones, and I mic'd up this whole area, where we have. This is like Mahim. I mic'd up the whole area where you have the train going and all that, the pit and where the water body is all, and this mob coming in and riot and all that. So I also wanted to capture the horror of riot. This sequence is also very, very interesting, very example of how subtexts are created, with the use of sound. So so it opens with you know, we will play this scene once again, and probably I can talk through it while it is playing. So it opens with this mother playing, you know, mother washing the clothes, and you hear the, you know, we hear the clothes of her. We also hear the sounds of her, you know, her hands and chulia and all that, and water sounds and all that. And the kids are playing. And suddenly the kids goes under the water and he comes up. When he comes up, everything is muted. And the mother looks at something, some train goes, and something like a train passes. And she looks at it and see a mob is approaching. That is when this voice comes up.
Right.
Then everything goes in muted. I mean, we have rolled off the high frequency and created, you know, a kind of an image where that is how the boy is hearing, you know.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
As if the water is running through his ears. So, you know, without the camera going into the boy's perspective, we are actually managed to put his perspective, you know, by way of just changing the sound. Then he sees her mother being beaten, mother falls, you know. Then we have to go into his mind space. What would be his state of mind? His state of mind would be horror, you know. Then we cut to real sound of, you know, the mother again hit and she falls in the water. Then the sounds of riot in reality, what is actually the production sound, you know. We cut into that and the boy starts running. That is when the music is coming in, you know. Like I said, then we have to give, as an audience, I have to be with the kids. I want the kids to escape from there.
Right.
And they see the man burning, you know, and they start running. And the music comes in a very slow pace. The music is played very rhythmically, you know, and the piano strums played like a rhythm. It comes in. And when actually they see the other boy that dressed like God, even the God is not going to help them. And the only thing that they can do is like run, you know. Then we go into the human physicality of someone in that situation. That is when the rhythm of the music kicks in. You know, Rahman gave us a whole score, but we choose elements from the score to use it here. Then they come to the police. You know, when they come to the police, it's quite evident, it's quite known fact that the police didn't help people during the riot. You know, then Danny was not making a political film, you know. So we had the dialogue of the police saying, go away, don't come here and all that. But in the mix, you don't hear that very well, you know, because Danny didn't want to make a political statement about it. So, but yet it has to be a human situation, you know.
Correct.
So we reduced that level of the police's dialogue, and we reverberated it a little bit. If you hear closely, you can hear all that in a 5-1 situation. This went down. That's what I said. No, you're creating subtext. You know,
it's sort of like if you were to like almost reduce like a spotlight, you know, on something.
To me, what is the meaning of art? Subtlety is art. You know, sometimes the meaning of it is not apparent. It is just there. It is for us to decipher. It is for the time to decipher the meaning of art. You know, subtlety is what makes art. You know, I mean, here by way of reducing the police constables' voices and putting them far away from the apparent meaning of the scene, is actually created a subtle meaning. You know, subtle impression of what is actually.
Can we play that clip again, but not the video, just the audio, and maybe talk over it, because we've seen the video now, and maybe. I don't know. I mean, I've done it before, and it's a great. Like, I mean, it's a great way to
experience the. I think we can do that. Just give us a second.
No worries. I had a question, but now I'm kind of blanking. So so actually, you know, you mentioned that you had a full score, but you chose where to bring that out, right? I find that very interesting because, at least as far as I'm aware, here in so-called the Hollywood system or whatever, the director will go in and give you the cues ahead of time where the score needs to come in and where the score needs to not be there. Or whatever.
We call that spotting. We call that spotting. You know, that spotting. The spotting is there. I mean, once you spot the music and the music comes to you, then you know when the whole sound is constructed, you may not have to use the whole music as it is.
Okay. So how does that collaboration work? Do you send it back to the composer to say, hey, no, we're changing it this way, so can you fix something?
Sometimes, see, it works differently in different places. In Hollywood, we always have a music editor on the stage, on the mix stage. So whatever changes that we want to make, approved by the director at that moment, the music editor would make it. You know,
right. So it happens there and then.
A composer never sits in the mix. You know.
Okay.
In Hollywood, so he would make choices and makes it happen.
Okay.
Whereas here, you know, it's one-man army, so we do everything. You know, we do the music edit, and quite often I am blamed by the music composers that Resul Pookutty means close the music. AR actually calls me Resul Pookutty, close the music. So I have this bad reputation, or you know, good reputation for the filmmaker, probably, that I want to use music. You know, like I said, music is an expression that he has given. I take that expression. You know, however good a performance is in front of camera, we often make cuts, right?
Yeah.
So that to make a scene better, to make a dynamism of a scene. Likewise, however good a music is, and sometimes a good music may not work for that particular scene. Everything have to come together as a homogeneous expression. So, and you have to make choices about that. And I am constantly making choices, and people come to me because they think that my choices are you know, something like contributing value to their to the work they're doing.
Their project,
yeah. So, and I take my responsibility very, very seriously. You know,
should we play the audio?
Yeah. I can talk through it.
Yeah.
Those are sound effects. Now you hear the sound of clothes being washed.
Yeah.
Also the spatial relation of how, like a wide shot almost, you know?
That's sound design. It's like a musical expression, but not music. The boy gone in the water. Everything muted now. Comes up. Follow the buckets.
Okay.
The mother yelling for him, but he's not hearing it. Mob is approached. Mother hit. That's the big hit. Now we are in the horror. Production sound as it is recorded. You see the man burning. See hear the use of the child cry. Music coming in. Strokes are played very.
There's an attack.
Now you see the little boy. Everything went out. Rhythm comes in now. We want the kids to escape. They reach the police. He says, "Hey, chal bhag. Ghar pe ja." fully burning now. For that thing, we come back to the studio where he says, if it wasn't for Ram and Allah, my mother would have still been alive. You know, it's one of my favorite lines from the film. You know, Neeraj, you said in the beginning of the discussion, you know, about Slumdog, that the music was very overpowering. You know, yes, it is. Yes, it is. We constructed it like that, and we wanted this fight between music and sound effects. You know, especially for example, if you watch Slumdog again, where this Jamal goes to find Latika in the VT station, you know, and when he actually finds her, the other boy, the goons, comes and pick her up and take her away, you know. And all those stuff was shot live, you know, with multiple cameras and with multiple sound crews and me and everything coming to my board and mixing it. And there, this entire, you know, spectrum of sounds of this place against music. So the situational banalities of Jamal and Latika being overpowered by the goons are actually, it's quite like that, you know. The sound and music in the audio,
it almost mirrors
is actually having the same. So it's actually mirroring what the emotional content of the film. In the physicality of having powerful music and powerful sound design, fighting for each other to be heard is also become an emotional expression of what is actually happening within the screen. You know, Slumdog is constructed like that.
Yeah. I have an interesting question for you. I mean, so, you know, like oftentimes, like you'll see, like, you know, cinematographers or directors, they'll just kind of roam around and take pictures on a day-to-day basis. Do you ever, like, you know, roam around and just collect sound for your, like, you know, for future use of something? I mean, I know sound people who do that, which is why I'm just curious if you do that as well.
Yes. I have a huge collection of sounds from all over the world, you know. And I'm constantly listening, unlike probably regular people, like the way you guys, you know, I am actually deconstructing everything. When you go to a restaurant, you know, what makes you feel in a particular way in a restaurant? I am actually constantly listening. Where the cutlery coming from? What kind of cutlery? You know, I can actually, you imagine, I can actually anthropologically define a space like a restaurant just by the sound of the cutlery. If that cutlery is of silver, it will sound different. If the cutlery has a lot of wine glasses and ringings, you know. So you know, you see, sound is constantly giving you anthropological information. You know.
Sorry, I'm just looking through some of the questions.
To be a good someone, you actually have to be a good, you know, you're actually a good
listener.
Cultural, you know, cultural torchbearer, actually, in a way.
Okay, so we have a few questions that have come in from the people that are watching. So some we've covered, some we've not, but let's see. The first one is from Vritika, which is, with all these various types of sounds that create setting, how do you choose when silences are necessary?
Okay. Quite often people say that silence is the most powerful sound. I don't think silence is a sound, you know. It is actually a very, I mean, I say it is a very wrong construction of what silence is all about. Do you experience silence in your life? Imagine on a Monday morning, you have work, you have tons of things to do in the office, you're rushing, and suddenly you get a phone call saying that your mother passed away. Everything stops. You experience a vacuum. For me, that is silence. So silence for me in a movie is something that I arrive at.
Right.
You know, it's not something that there is no sound. Like, it is a time where I see the landscape. Everything is loud when I'm not hearing the landscape. You know, for me, silence is at a particular point in the film, I choose my audience to experience that landscape. So I arrive at that emotional
Right.
moment of
So
silence.
aside
Yeah.
from just silence being the lack of sound, it has to also be almost
it is not the lack of,
emotionally.
it is not, no. Neeraj, wrong. It is not the lack of sound.
Okay.
To experience darkness in film, you have to throw some light into it.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing called silence in film. You know, when we talk about film, you have a ground noise, what we call the SST, the sound of the SST.
Right.
Ground noise of the film that is running, that is your bass sound. In today's time, when there is no physical film running, you have the ground noise of the auditorium, the AC running, so many people
Right.
sitting together.
Yeah.
That is the bass sound.
Okay.
The silence that you talk about in film is actually a relative sound to the
Yeah.
to the
To what's
life
happened.
moments,
Yeah.
to the life
Exactly.
moments at that given point.
Mm.
Why silence work in movies? You know, I tell you why it works. When you are actually sitting in a movie hall, when everything is dark,
Mm-hmm.
you are actually, the first sound that you are sensing is your breath.
Mm.
You are actually, this is something that you are not understanding, you are not hearing it, but you are
Right.
going through as an
But
experience.
yeah, exactly.
The first thing is your breath.
Mm-hmm.
With that breath, there is a connectivity with the screen, what you
Mm-hmm.
see in the screen. So there is this connection between you, your heartbeat, your breath, and what is evolving, the rhythm that is evolving in the screen, on the
Yeah.
screen. There is this synthesis between you as a person who is making emotional rides with the narrative graph of a film to your own experience of sitting in that room and breathing.
Right.
When you're actually seeing an emotional scene, actually your breathing is increasing. When you're actually watching a very um, suspense situation,
Yeah.
you're constantly reacting. Your body
Yeah.
is actually reacting to how much blood is pumped into your body at that given point.
Yeah.
So for me, silence is not a sound. Silence is a moment that I take the audience into that state of being.
Right.
You don't hear the sound of a pin falling in real life. The fact that I can make a pin falling in a film, allows me that I can actually control your hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what happens in film.
Wow. That's very. I've never thought about it that way, but now that you said it
Yeah.
this way, it makes a lot of
Like
sense.
it seems like the obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. We have another question from Sukriti, which is, does the audience's cultural association with certain types of sound or musical vocabulary evoking certain emotions play a part or shift for different cultural contexts when you're designing the sound?
Oh yes, absolutely. When I was working in a film about Liv Ullmann and Ingmar Bergman, I constantly dealt with it because it was, Bergman lived in an island called Visby. Only 500 people on that island, and everything is so quiet, so quiet.
Yeah.
And Bergman's house had, it is quieter than a sound studio. I could walk into his room and say, "Oh, NC20 achieved here." It is that quiet, and his windows are vast, expansive windows. From there, you can see the Baltic Sea. Every window is a frame, is a beautifully crafted frame in his house. So I recorded things there, and I realized that there's absolutely no sound there. It is so quiet. To design something, probably you could say it was very easy to design. You put sound in a Bombay-based film because there's lots of sound. You just have to choose and put it in. The decision to not to use, for example, why I consider Bergman as one of my favorite filmmakers is that in every time I see a Bergman frame, he is constantly telling me what is not to be kept in a frame. Even if it's just a hand, it constantly tells me what is not to be kept in a frame. It likewise, um, when I designed that film is what is not to be done. So the producer came in, and of course it was that whole film was a very big experiment for me because I was dealing with a master's work. I was dealing with three kinds of time element, and there's a time element that Liv is talking about their life, and there's a time element we constructed with Bergman's films through that.
Right.
And often we went inside the film. So I had to deal with these three time elements, and I was playing back and forth with three time elements. And I did reconstruct Bergman's soundscape for the sake of this film. So I was dealing with all that. I was retouching master's work, and when I was doing that, there were sequences where I had lapping of sound, lapping of waves.
Right.
And obviously, I picked up one sound from a library and put it in. And the producer came and said, that sea doesn't sound like Scandinavian sea. I was like, you're right. Arabian Sea sounds different.
Wow.
The Scandinavian Sea had more froth in it. It was not harsh. You see? So everything, that's what I'm saying. Your behavior changes with the sounds that you are living in.
That's fantastic.
When you are in Bombay, you feel that you have to go for work, and this is it. You have to deliver your deadlines. You have to make this, all that. When you go to Pune, you sit like that. So it's human behavior is constantly changing, of course. And like I said, every piece of information, every piece of sound image that you put it in a film, also culturally represent that particular milieu. And I'm very conscious about it.
Yeah.
We have another question from Shraddha. She's asking, how much does your process differ when working on Hindi films versus Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada films? And the score in the latter tends to be more visceral.
I mean, the score in mainstream films, visceral, or
no, in the Malayalam and Tamil films, seems to be more visceral.
I mean, see, you have to basically understand what is actually score doing in a film, especially in a country like India. We have to have a very clear understanding of this. Against our counterparts in the West, what is the staple diet of people in India? Their staple diet of music come from Hindi cinema. We don't have a different musical industry like the way the West has it.
Right.
So if the West wants to have songs in their movie, they make a musical. And for us, everything is a musical, because we through our film, we also have to supply music to our audience. And every of our expression is loud. I don't want to use the word loud. I would say unabashed. When the West is very subtle about their expressions, musically and otherwise, we have no shame. We have an ambassador car. We will fit in 15 people in it. We have a Maruti 800. We will put 10 people in it. We will push it to the extreme extent. So we are unabashed with our sense of expressions and the meaning that we want to construct.
Yes.
So music has become a very, very important tool for people. So you have to have a clear understanding of this when you actually dealing with popular Indian cinema. Popular is, that's one of the main things that Danny Boyle told me about when he was doing Slumdog. He said, you guys are so bold. There's something called kitsch in the West.
Yeah.
He said, there is no kitsch here. Kitsch is the expression. It's everywhere, He said, I want to use that. I want that aspect of Indian cinema as the main text of me. Like Neeraj, when you said music is very overpowering in Slumdog, we actually took those elements of popular Indian cinema and put it in the right perspective. You see?
Right.
So that's what happens when when I deal with the popular cinema. You know, yes, it is very visceral, and we have no shame in it. When it is coming, it is coming.
How do you
Like
find
quite
that?
often.
No, go
Like
ahead.
for
you were
example,
saying.
let me answer her question different way. Like, you know, many people when Rahman won the Oscar, many people said Slumdog is not his best score. You know, Rahman is Oscar worthy, but this is not his best work. I would say this is one work where his music were used well.
The best.
You know, that went across to the audience.
Right.
That's how that's why he won an Oscar. So I look at it from that perspective, you know. And we are very bold in that in that respect.
Yeah. How do you find that creative balance between, like, say for example, sometimes you may have a certain take on some project, right? Or even if it's not within a given project, it's like for your own creative sanity. How do you kind of balance that, or like how do you pick the films that you want to go ahead with when someone approaches you?
Predominantly, of course, the level of the screenwriting, and I also look at the passion of people who comes to me. And if you look at my filmography, I have like one big film in a year, and I have like 3-4 small independent films. You know, out of 6 films in a year, I have like 1 or 2 big films, and others are small films. And there's a lot of first timers worked with me, and I enjoy working with youngsters and new breed of filmmakers, because I learn a lot from them. You know, they come with certain passion. I see that passion, and I go with them. And so that is that's my approach. That's my approach.
Yeah.
What was your question again?
No, I mean, it was basically that. It's like, I mean, that you kind of answered a lot of it in that by telling us about how you like working with, newer directors who are kind of passionate about their work. So when you're working on, you mentioned in a given year, you might work on it, say 5 to 6 projects. Does it end up being you do one, finish it, and then the next one? Or is it potentially where you are working on one and finishing another one in different stages?
See, over the years, I have created my own set of people, my own set of sound editors and sound designers who work with me, who basically understands me. You know, I mean, over the last 15, 20 years, I've trained them, and we have arrived at a kind of sound that I want to hear. So when probably when I am mixing one film, I am probably started sound designing another one.
Right.
But each film has its own text. You know, everything will I will have given them a contour to work within it, and I constantly monitor what they're doing, and I'll constantly listen to them and correct them their course of things. And yeah, I would do multiple projects, but those multiple projects will be in different stages. You know,
Yeah,
right.
I can't possibly mix 2 films at a time.
Correct.
I can mix one. I can look at design.
Right.
It's a constant process.
That makes sense. Did we have any more questions, Ishan?
I'm just checking. I had a question from earlier, but I can't remember it.
Well, there's this question here, which is from that scene in Slumdog, which was, were the sounds of the trains anything similar to like those in a video game, because I think they are a little bit more stylized in the way you mixed it.
Like I said, we constantly process sounds. We constantly change them so that their expressions can be different. If not, you need not necessarily see what happens in film. Like sound of a glass falling, it may not be the best glass fall sound. It's the best sound for that particular moment. Right. What we do is, what we constantly try to achieve is, when I play a sound in a film, the audience should feel that there couldn't have been any other sound but that sound. That's principle. A car door, the sound of a car door may not be the car door sound of that particular car door. I can manipulate it with the sound of a fridge door closing.
Okay.
Sometimes we multi-layer it
Mhm.
to create one sound, give a combination of 5 or 6 sounds or 10 sounds, 20
Right.
sounds. One ambience that you're hearing, probably it is deconstructed into, it's like how you, like for example, let's take Western classical music. What is the construction of Western classical music? There is soprano, alto, bass.
Right.
You know, instruments are arranged as per the frequencies.
Right.
Likewise, an ambience is constructed on the same way: soprano, alto, bass.
Mm.
You want to hear air in a particular environment. We find air as the way a music is constructed.
Mm.
Like the way. So every element that we hear as one element is actually constructed with multiple elements. I mean, we are
Right.
mixing like maybe 1,000 tracks in a movie to create one expression.
Right.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Cool. Has there ever been like a scene that you're like that just caused too much pain to like go through and figure out, like anything that really was like a a true struggle to like kind of solve the puzzle, so to speak?
It do happen when we were, for example, when I worked with in a movie called Gandhi, My Father.
Mm.
It was about life of Mahatma Gandhi with his relationship with his elder son. You know, and I have decided to take certain stand. Like, I will not process sound. I will not change it.
Mm.
Because what is Gandhi's life? Gandhi's life is about simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
It was so simple, you know. So I wanted to keep that economy of sound.
Right.
So I never, went into majorly processing sound.
Mm-hmm.
And many a time I actually, that's probably the first time dialogues are captured in stereo. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so every acoustics that you hear in that film is actually captured right there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't process it. I didn't add reverbs and created
Right. Right.
rooms and things like that. So I have, taken some artistic restrained in,
Mm-hmm.
while doing that movie, and sometimes it's very painful to
Mm-hmm.
sort of make sure that okay, that restraint that you have decided to take, whether it is paid off, not paid off, whether
Right.
it goes to the audience, not going to the audience,
Mm.
sometime, when I very remember, I will tell you a very personal story, not because of Ishan.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in a film called Saviria. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it was it was a very it was one of the experimental mainstream cinema. You know, Robert Bresson made a film about it is Dostoevsky's Four Nights of a Dreamer. Bresson made it, Visconti made it, and I thought it was a great opportunity for me to work on it because someone is doing a popular Hindi cinema interpretation of Dostoevsky's work.
Mm.
Yeah.
And for me, in terms of sound, it was 4 nights. A night where they meet, a night before rains, night where it rains, and the night where it snows.
Okay.
When we talk about romantic get together,
Mm.
you know, there's a boy and a girl, and there is moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
There's moonlight. I mean, we don't actually question where the moonlight has come from. Okay, is it Purnami today or not? In cinema, we never ask these questions.
Right.
So I was dealing with 4 nights, and I thought, what kind of nights? And I decided, okay, one night I will record and I'll remove elements from it. You know, I remove elements that are directly related to the temporal aspect of that particular audience ambience that I'm recording.
Mm.
Remove it, and what is remaining as an expression of that temporal element, I'll put it as a time element. So the first night. So I went to jungles, I went to Film City, and I recorded many nights. Many nights I went there and recorded. And one night I was standing in the middle of the lake, and I suddenly heard a plunk sound, like pluck.
Mm.
It's like in judo, when this man is standing in the water, you hear the the lotus burst, like that.
Mm.
I heard sound of, it was actually little fishes, and they were just jumping around,
Mm.
and when I was standing there, I realized that there is, the nature has given frequency spectrum to everyone in this universe. There are creatures living at the level of the earth. There are creatures above the earth. There are trees. There are, at certain heights, there are living elements. There, the living energy is being embedded in a vertical space like that. Arrangement of frequencies in a vertical spectrum. And I said, I'm standing here at this moment, and this whole earth is moving, with a huge sound, and I'm not hearing it. You see? So we are constantly spinning within the circumference of this huge sound, vibratory impact of it.
Yeah.
And I felt at that moment, I am one with the universe. I very well remember this particular piece of ambient straight away, editing it in the studio and putting it on the picture. Dave called me from New York after watching the movie. If Dave is listening to this, and he talked about this night, it is freaking to me. And he talked about this particular night, the ambience, and he said, you did fantastic work. To me, a conversation is complete. At that moment when Dave called me, I felt someone who is sitting in the other part of the universe actually heard me. To me, my work in every film is the kind of conversation that I'm trying to make with my audience. And if somebody hears it, recognize it, I feel that conversation is complete.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story.
How are we doing in terms of time?
I think
we're good. We're good. I think we can. I think that feels like a really nice nice story and note to end the session. So thank you so much for joining us. I think I think both of us, both Neeraj and I, sort of really are fascinated by the sound component, I think, in films, and that's only gotten even more. I think it's sort of opened up the way we look at it even more after today. And I'm sure for everyone who's watching and will watch, it'll definitely do the same. So I mean, just thank you so much.
Pardon my Sunday morning, maids coming.
No, it's totally fine.
It's totally fine.
Sorry. Cool. I guess that's all.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishan. Thank you, Neeraj. Thanks all of you for listening to me this morning and giving me a chance to discuss my art.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful.
No, it's great. I think it gives us a way to think about it, right? I think the thing is it's in our nature to dissect images, and sound sometimes it's because we are so used to seeing so many images on a day-to-day basis, it's hard to say, let's set the images aside and let's think about the sound and how it's created. And I think this allows us to do that, just after hearing you kind of.
It's also just second nature, right? Because like you said, sound is like we're always hearing, and we're, without realizing, making the choice of what to ignore. So that and that happens without us realizing almost.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. All right.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.